Councillor Alwyn Griffith, Tracy Evans and Tim Jones, and Mr. Jonathan Coley, one of the directors, and Councillor Elfed Roberts as well. Thank you, Anwen. Any other apologies? None? So I'll move on then to the declarations of the chairman's announcements rather. I'll begin by going back to the minutes of the last meeting of the authority where you suggested or proposed that we write to the ministers 2 letters, one about planning, that we discuss that response. I think we discussed in the last planning committee, and the response wasn't very positive one. The government felt that we had enough ability within the rules we had to control the problem of holiday homes. It's good that they acknowledge we had the problem, but they already thought we had the powers to deal with the problem, which is disappointing. And then a letter went to Judy James about the proposal, John Pugh, last time about the park. That's just gone now, and we haven't had a response as of yet. Then the Welsh Government has asked us to evaluate members which are appointed by the government, and that will, well, that has happened, and they've asked us to evaluate the members who are appointed by the Welsh Government from now on, and we're beginning to do that as soon as is convenient. We'll be contacting some of you very soon. Then we've had a request from some of the staff for a day off on St David's Day this year. I'm sure we've discussed this in the past. Emyr and myself felt that because of the situation this year and the pressure that your staff has been under with all the problems now, it would be reasonable for this year that we did give St David's Day as a staff holiday. For this year, we think it's reasonable to do so. I don't know if Emyr wants to add anything to that. But I hope you will support the decision anyway. You will know, perhaps, that the Chief Executive of the BANAI has retired. The Chief Executive, so they're looking for a new Chief Executive, and that process is ongoing. I think they're appointing now. Where are they at the process? Perhaps Emyr can answer that, but they'll be appointing somebody soon, so we wish them well, and we hope that they'll have a suitable Chief Executive. You will also know that every year that's one of the parks of England and Wales are running sessions for new members, and this year it's Eryri's turn. Every new member who's been appointed during the last year will have an opportunity to come to Eryri, and that will be happening in September. And I think that 1 or 2 of you hopefully will be on it, so we look forward to seeing you. You will also have had a message from officers last night, I believe, saying that we have appointed officers as wardens, and we wish them well. So those are all the announcements I have. The next item is the corporate update. I did feel that it's right for the chairman to make a statement, but it would be useful for us to discuss what's happened in the past. So we'll ask Emyr to give an update, more of a corporate update then on the authority. Emyr? Thank you, Chairman. Just 2 or 3 points. The Euros, the letter from Councillor John Pewitt's gone to the Minister, Leslie Griffiths, in the Welsh Government. And with the St David's Day, well, what we felt, we have very little power as an authority to appreciate the commitment of staff and the work they put in, especially recently. And we thought we could give them St David's Day as an additional holiday as a way of acknowledging their contribution to the authority. And I think that the Chief Executive for the Brecon Beacons post closes middle of this month. More practical matters. I'm sure you've picked up that we closed the car parks in all of the area, and this was done at the request of Gold Command and the police in North Wales. And so it makes their work easier, of course. And I think picked up that the beacons have closed in Penavon. There was an item which was supposed to be the purchase of a parcel of land. That isn't going ahead, and we will be discussing that with the Welsh Government, what to do with that resource under the SOSP grant scheme. I just remind you that we've had several million, and there are further discussions on this paper today. Also, the budget will be welcomed, and we'll be discussing that later on in March. We have finished the formal consultation process, and we're very disappointed with the response which we had. But for some reason, this consultation, every year we do it, does not get a good response. As far as staff appointments are concerned, Plas Tannabulch, the house manager has been appointed, Sharon Roberts. The website, well, officers have interviewed companies that have tendered for the work. But the final decision about the company hasn't been taken as of yet. And then there are projects, the traffic project for the north of the park. There are online workshops going to be held soon. And the focus on Llanberis, Bedd Gelert, Betws y Coed. And also the consultation has opened, and it will close on the 7th of March. Under that scheme as well, the public traffic consultation management, trains and buses, that has commenced, and they will report back to us. And we're still looking at the system of car parks and looking at what that'll look later on. And the same way with the system for monitoring traffic in North Wales. And we have a commission out as well to acknowledge the cycling network and the cycle hire scheme. Another thing is we should open discussions with Gwynedd County Council about yellow lines on Pen-y-Pass, and the meeting will be held this week to create a partnership to move this work forward. So then the Dolgellau scheme work is going ahead, but because of trouble we've had with COVID, the lottery has given us a year's extension on that programme, and members will remember their visit to the site. The work is almost beginning with that work, and then so to those of you who buy the Pitch Through Forwards magazine, the Sospan building has been nominated as for an award there. So we look forward to see what happens there. Then the SMS plans, The Maun project has had an extension of 12 months, and Eden is coming to an end this March, and the Dinas Mawddwy project has been recommended. We're going to have contractors to move the work forward. As the chairman said, the two senior wardens have been appointed, Rhys Roberts in the north and David Prysor-Jones in the south. And you must remember when we reported previously that 2 officers moving forward, so new officers started instead of them. And then Archwilio Cymru will be reporting in April. So that briefly is a trial run. If there's too much information there for you, well, I'll have feedback from you later. Thank you. Thank you very much, Emyr. We appreciate that. Owen, do you have a question? Thank you. I don't know whether, well, I'm in danger of creating a precedent here with these first 2 items, but I think you're saying, Wyn, that a request has come from staff members to have, I don't know if that's an executive issue. I don't know if you want the support of the members formally, but certainly I would welcome that acknowledgement. As we've seen during the first lockdown, I am fully aware of how much effort and work the staff have done during that period. The only other question I would have is about the consultation process with the traffic scheme. Would the staff welcome members to be present in some of those meetings, those virtual meetings, or not?
Sorry,
Emyr.
no, just yeah.
No, just to answer. On the matter of giving a discretionary day for staff, that's within my powers, but obviously I wouldn't use those without consultation with the chairman. And the second matter, yes, on every account, it's important that we have support on every level for this scheme. And I agree with Owen, there is a danger that a part of this agenda perhaps will take too much time and take us to places which haven't been programmed. So there's no need to have the support of the authority for the decision, but I think it would be good if you would like to make a proposal, Owen, that we support this. Yes, I make a formal proposal then. And I'll second, Mr. Chairman. All right. We had a bit of a problem with the cross and tick last time. Is it worth us trying it again, Ewan? It would be an opportunity to try it out to see if it works this time. We'll try it. If you support this, just press the tick. If you're against, press the cross. I think we've got the same problem. Only 2 show as a yes vote. So may I suggest then that you give a show of hands. Can I come in here before we vote on this, just to expand this discussion? What I'm thinking, what stops us from doing this every year? After all, we have a patron saint is an important part of our heritage, and they can give a day's holiday in other countries, so why not here? That's my question. And in addition to what Owen has proposed, I want to propose that we have a committee to look at this and that we give them a day's holiday every year. Fine. Can we do these issues matters separately, or? Well, I was a bit concerned that we were going to do something for a long-term principle without having a chance to discuss it, but I'm quite happy to accept Elwyn's amendment that we have a committee to consider this matter. All right. So you all understand what you are voting for, that we are supportive of, that we agree with this, and that we'll be discussing it for this year, but we'll discuss what we do in the future in committee. Do you want to come in here? Well, with Emir mentioned the bikes in the south of the park, something similar in the north of the park. Is there something similar going to be in the south of the park with cycling? So what about the south of the park? The focus is on the north in the first place because of the pressure. But the way the work has been set out, the principles could be rolled out to other parts of the park, hopefully. Thank you. So Owen's proposal then, we'll have a show of hands if you are in favour. If you could raise your hands. Are you happy with that, Iwan? Yes, it's been carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. And if we'll move on to the next item, please, which is the public question time. Iwan? There's nothing there. Item 4, declaration of interest. Does anybody want to declare an interest? None? So we'll move on to the minutes. The first set of minutes of the authority held on the 18th of November, page 3. We'll just check that they are correct to start with. 3, 4 and 5. Correct? Proposed, seconded. Could you show, please, that you're in favour? Excellent. Anything arising from those minutes? Right. And then the next set of minutes from the 9th of December, page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. If I can come in on page 13 in the English, Tim Jones has asked me to raise, well, there's 2 points of corrections here, where it refers to what Councillor Alwyn Griffith said in the last point. He says discussions were continuing on underground turbines. And then it goes on, he's now quoting, and that reads like small modular, that should read a small modular reactor projects. Are you all happy with that amendment? All right. Could you show, please, if you're happy with that correction? Right. Anybody against? Nobody. Thank you. Anything else arising from those minutes? None? So we'll go to item 7. Iwan?
Daflen weithredu, yeah?
Well, that is the, yes, item 7, which is the action log. On page 16 in the Welsh version, we suggest that that item is withdrawn. The reason why it hadn't been withdrawn before was because of the work which was done by improving work online for the public, and we weren't in a position to appoint contractors to move forward with that work. So the recommendation now is that we withdraw that. And the same then on the one on page 18 that that work is, you'll see that in 18 and 19 we continue with those, and the same then on page 20 and page 21. But then on page 22 the work has been completed and the strategic objectives, etc. 21 and 26, and the same then with the options with Plas Tannabulch under item 23 on page 24. Again, there are 2 to take away there, and 1 again on the final page. That is number 12, the consultation document relating to the corporate joint committees. So that's it. Thank you very much. Brian.
Thank you, Chair. There seems to be a complete difference in pagination for the Welsh and the English versions. I'm finding it very difficult to follow because we got up to page 26 there, which takes me into item 9.
I think there's a discrepancy about 3 in the pages. So I think for future meetings, we need to ensure that there's blank pages in the English or the Welsh so that items are corresponding with page numbers.
It would be very helpful. It's very difficult to follow through the interpreter when page numbers are only given. If there are item numbers for particular, like in that table, it'd be much more helpful to have the item numbers.
What I'm saying, if you'd like, I refer to the items, the specific items, rather than refer to the number of the pages from now on, if that's all right.
That would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Owain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm willing to propose the recommendation. I'm glad to see that quite a few of these are been done away with this time. The only question I have is with the items for the youth manifesto. I know I've mentioned this previously, but I would like to see an increase in the provision for the youth, especially perhaps as we hope to come out of this pandemic. There'll be the need to support the young people, and that will be more important than ever. And I think we need to be ready to act here. Thank you very much. We'll try to prioritise. Owain proposes that we accept the recommendations. Does anybody second? Elwyn seconds. Could you show, please? Right. So.
John?
John?
Sorry, stay on mute, John.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, you're on mute, John. Thank you. I think it would be unacceptable, nothing controversial in that proposal. Could you just give a show of hands, please? Is everybody's blue hand working? Would that be easier, Iwan? It makes it easier to count then. I don't know if everybody can do that. When he's showing his thumb like that. If you are supportive to Owen's proposal, could you raise a blue hand? So I haven't a blue hand to raise as chairman. It's been carried. And I think that those, well, all right. So we'll try it. We'll come to the vote. And yes, in that kind of situation, I think we'd have to, yes.
Okay. os ydych chi dynnu'ch dilo glas.
If you can take away the blue hands, please, unless you want to share.
Eitem 8 ydy eitem y swyddfa archwilio. Does na neb yma o'r swyddfa archwilio? Be dwi'n ddall, Emyr, wyt ti'n cymryd hwn?
Ie, jyst nodyn i gadarnhau bod ni bod yn cyrraedd y safon efo mesur llywodraeth leol, a mae hwnna wedi cael ei disapleio i barciau cenedlaethol a llywodraeth leol a gwasanaeth tân. Mi da ni mewn trafodaethau efo Archwilio Cymru a Llywodraeth Cymru fel beth sy'n dod yn lle hwn. Ond dwi'n meddwl na hwn fydd y dwythaf fyddwch chi'n gael. Gwybodaeth ydy o, ond mae'r swyddogion Swydd Archwilio Cymru wedi dweud os oes gennych chi unrhyw mater.
Chairman, I'm not getting any translation, I'm afraid.
Rob, Tina?
No, I think we're in the middle of trying to change translator, so
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
not sure if
Ydy Catrin, yeah, yes, yeah. Yeah, anfonwch si neges bach I Catrin. Yes, if you'll carry on. I'll just go through over what I've said briefly, in case as you've lost something. This perhaps is the statement under the last local government, and it is done for the next year, from the next year forward. So we are in discussions with the Welsh Government and the Audit Office on how to deal with the new arrangements. Officers will be coming to the next authority meeting in April. So if you have any questions you'd like to raise with them, I'll take them now. So I'll take it up with them in April. But this is for information more than anything. Thank you, Emyr. Has anybody got any questions? Anything you want to pass on? So could you propose then that we accept this? Edgar is proposing, Judith is seconding. Could you show, please, with the blue hand on the screen, if you support it?
Sorry, ond does gen I ddim...
Sorry, but I have no blue hand, so I'm putting up my real hand.
Does gen I ddim buttons?
I haven't got a button. I can see a list of names, but there's no button, sorry. Do you have reactions at the bottom?
Does na ddim, dim ond...
There is nothing, only mute. When I press it again on the profile picture or mute, there is no hand or light or anything like that today. I don't know why. I'll be in contact with you later on so that we can look at it properly. I think that Iwan will know how it works and we'll keep an eye on this. Elbed, did you put your hand up? After there's a hand and a tick and yes or no there. Well, it's been carried anyway. Are you happy, Iwan? I see several blue hands. Some are raising their hands, some are doing a thumbs up sign and some are clapping. But I take it that it's all in agreement, so it's been carried. So if you can just put your blue hands down and we'll move on to item 9 on the agenda, which is the budget of the for 2021-22. David or Emyr? David? Item 9 on the budget, is it? Yes, please. Well, good morning, everybody. What we have here is the budget of the authority and for 21-22, beginning from April. And the report is on the basis of the draft grant which we had from the Welsh Government for the authority, and the final settlement grant will continue in March, and everything is later this year. There's a statutory requirement for us to set the budget on taxes before the 11th of February, so that it's a little bit absurd before we have the confirmation of the final grant. But the discussions I've had, there is no, we don't expect any change from the grant which we thought we'd had in December and the final grant, but I've no guarantee of that, of course. In addition to the budget, we are setting the taxes that has been shared between Gwynedd Council and Conwy Borough Council. The budgets to every purpose, the budget of the authority is based on, well, on the spending on the present level of services. As we did in 21-22, we don't add things like that, but we come to that in a minute. And part 2 of the report mentions a draft settlement, and that came on the 31st of December, or 21st December, and we had an increase of 10%. And well, in the 15 years I've been presenting this, we've been facing cuts or flat cash, whatever. So this is excellent news, seeing an increase of 10%, which means that the allocation is over 4 million next year, as is shown there in paragraph 2.1. That means that we have a surplus of almost 500,000 for the authority for the year beginning in April. And at present, just for now, we've noted that surplus in, you can see there, under the management team, but with options of using it, discussing with you as members of the authority, in a working party which will be held on the 3rd of March. And I think it'll give us a little bit more time as managers and members to think what is the most appropriate use of that money, and to formalise some kind of proposals for you by the beginning of March. The additional grants, as we had as well, some grants we've had over 2 years, and those have included in the budget for next year. The capital sum as well has been promised, and that will be further discussed in the working party in March. Therefore, the Appendix 2 and 3 includes information about the budget of authority, and in 4 you have a more detailed analysis. I don't want to run through it. You've had the papers for a week, and you've had a chance to go through them with a fine-tooth comb. The individual grant plans increase the expenditure of revenue to every purpose. That goes up to 11 million with the grants. And there is capital of 1.3 million as well. With the grants, the majority of them, the capital revenue at 1 point, as it says in 1.5, the use of the reserves. At the time of writing, the budget will include the value of over 2 million net contributions from funds. That mostly includes grants, government grants, to receive them beforehand. And on from the budget to the levy, well, number 6, we talk about the levy. And 6.2, we explain there that the levies which are put on Gwynedd and Conwy are on the basis of a third from government grants, and that is in the table underneath. So you'll see there, and that sum is being shared in accordance with the relevant sums. In 1995, the park was established as a separate body, and that percentage stands since inception, so to speak. I don't know what the history behind this is, but it is to do with how much area in both counties. So that means the sum is 64, and the core grant and levies by Gwynedd and Conwy, and a contribution from reserves. So 7 million, you can see 0.657 there. That doesn't include specific grants. So we ask you to approve the budget as it is there, but it is important to note the intention to discuss the surplus you can see the surplus there, and that is to be discussed in the working party in March, the 3rd of March. And it is statutory that you must recommend the levies, although you have no discretion to change these sums. So therefore, with that, I'm open to questions. If Emmy Roberts has anything important to say that I've left out. Thank you.
Dwi jyst isio newid cyfieithydd rwan, sori. Mae Catrin di cyrraedd, Delyth.
Diolch.
Cyfieithydd yn gweithio?
Ne. Yes.
Iawn, gwerthfawr. Diolch yn fawr. John.
John, thank you very much for proposing the recommendation. We've had an increase. Of course, there's an election in May and there's a pandemic. I'm concerned what will happen in a year, 2 years, 3 years. There will probably be huge cuts with all of the costs that the country has had to shoulder. I'm very glad about this year, but we have to be very careful about future years. Thanks, John. Edgar? Well, I have the same thing to say, really. We have to remember that this is just for a year. It's not something that's going to be in continuity. I just wanted to say the same thing, basically. It's in the budget, so it's more difficult for them to take it away than it would be if it were a grant, but I accept the points you're making. We're not in a situation to spend all of it straight away. Owain? The phone is going in the background. Apologies for that. That is Owain's. We have the process of discussing this $500,000. I appreciate that it's the part of the management team's budget and there's a process in place to come up with ideas. I would appreciate the idea of the members having an input before then, rather than just responding to a report. I'd just like to ask for an opportunity for members to present their ideas, say within the next 2 weeks, to feed into that procedure. That's the question, whether or not we can do that. And also, I know that there's a lot of hard work that's gone on in the background. Our officers and the government officers as well, in order to reach this stage. This doesn't just happen as a windfall because it's an election year. There's quite a lot of appreciation of the park's work as a result of the pandemic, and I think that's being reflected in the good news that we've actually received. Yes, I would agree with that as well, Emyr.
Yeah, just ymateb
I just wanted to respond to Owen's point. Yes, we'd appreciate any input from members, but you shouldn't get as excited I did when we got that increase. The reality is, and I don't want to have the discussion, and the points that I'll be making in the working group is the COVID period will affect the business this year immensely. And so most of the increase will probably need to compensate the authority. What I've asked the staff to do is, what would you like to do as a one-off this year if it turns out to be better than anticipated, in the hope that we carry the 10% to the following year? That's when the interesting discussion will happen. Don't raise your hopes too much as members as to what we can achieve during the next year, but there may be a possibility from 22 onwards, because it's in our baseline. Like David said, it will be difficult or more difficult to remove it from the baseline, I would imagine. So thank you. David, was your hand up? I think you are right, actually. Once the money is in the baseline, it has to be a political decision to take it away from us. It's easier to get additional money during an election year, obviously, but the profile is there now, and there is sympathy there, certainly, which hasn't been present before in the past. I'm getting the messages that the money is there in the baseline budget. John Pugh and Edgar's comments about following years, that it's not continuous. I think that it is permanent. Of course, there's no guarantee that we'll get inflation on it. So we do need to be careful. But I don't believe we have to think about it as a one-off money, except for what Emyr has said, that Emyr has just said, that it's next year is going to be especially an insecure year. We've had some money from the relevant fund. We have no guarantee that we'll be getting any money from that fund next year, but we can try for it, of course. The discussions that we've had up to now will mean that it'll be a difficult discussion. There are decisions being made in the region. We've heard about car parks closing, Rhylfyrdd closing, Hafod, where there are decisions being made not to open. The government doesn't seem to be minded to fund us, to compensate us for that. So we have to consider those things when we move forward as well. And if God Command makes a decision to close car parks, we of course live with the implications of that. So it's an unusual year as we move forward. So, but I am pretty hopeful that since it has been included in the baseline, that's yeah, we can be hopeful. Thank you, David. You've heard the suggestion from Emyr. If you have any suggestions about what you'd like to see happening with this money, of course there will be insecurity. John and Edgar have proposed the recommendations as they stand. Unless anybody wants to speak, can we go to the vote, please? Can we have a blue hand on the screen? Or otherwise, if you don't have that feature, can you just show your hand, please? Motion carried. Moving on to the capital strategy, item 10. This capital strategy requires you to approve it on an annual basis. It used to be just the investment strategy, that is investment and borrowing, but now it includes capital information and financing that. I'll run through it to the most relevant parts. Paragraph 2.2, you can see the capital expenditure that's been planned. That's consistent with the previous reports. You can see the figure of 1.6 million, and that's being spent from the general fund on corporate services. And then the main projects are noted in the table in 2.3. There 2.5, there's another table coming to the same total, 1.6 million, and that shows how the capital expenditure is being financed. That is where the money is coming from, and that shows external sources and 300,000 from the authorities' resources. Those external resources mean grants specifically. And you'll see from these zero debt that we're debt-free at the moment. And I'd say that there's no intention to go into debt. I'll go over that again in a second. Part 3 talks about the treasury management, where we're trying to keep working capital for cash flow, etc. The borrowing strategy says that any borrowing in the future should be for specific necessary projects, which has a sound business case. To all intents and purposes, if we want to borrow, we need to be for something that's a priority. And in order to finance that, we have to be prudent. That is, that there's a grant in place to fund it, or that we're able to repay the and it's something that we would prioritize from our core monies, or that is reduces our expenditure or creates income. So that's what a sound business case would be. And any discussion on borrowing should start from the specific project that's, well, the merits of that project, rather than just randomly borrowing. Under 3.3, technically, well, this is technical, really, but it is statutory for you to approve the limit on affordable borrowing. Affordable borrowing are those plans where we say that we are able to afford it from the revenue budget, that income has increased or that expenditure has reduced, or it's more worthwhile to undertake it. We only include this. There's no intention to borrow, but if there was an emergency, well, we're in the middle of an emergency or a crisis at the moment, but if there was a financial occurrence where this is what this relates to, and we've put 500,000 there and 100,000 as an operational fee, which means that myself and Emir can borrow that much without approaching you. If we go over 100,000, I'd have to report to you. But this is a statutory or a consistent policy to keep the flexibility. With investment, on the other hand, our priority is security and fluidity and liquidity. That's the main thing, because at the moment interest is non-existent in any case, and people are talking about going into negativity. I don't think that's going to happen There was quite a lot of discussion about that a few months ago, and the likelihood of that happening has reduced now. As far as the next year is concerned, I would expect interest to keep on scarily low level, but not to go into negativity. So where do we put our money? The contract with Barclays gives us free banking if we leave a $1.25 million there. So that's a no-brainer that we stay with that. The rest of the money that we have, because grants come in before we spend it, etc., that we deposit that with the list that are included under 3.7, Bank of Scotland, HSBC, Santander, Barclays, Lloyds, Nationwide. The DMO is the government. We'd only go there if the status of these banks were to become so bad. We're saying at the moment they are dependable. Well, that is their credit status, so we're not going to approach the DMO at the moment. There's a recognized credit status, and we have an independent part on the Nationwide, which is fair enough. To all intents and purposes, I'm not going to go through the rest of the report. It's there for information as such. I'll take you through to the recommendations where I've noted no intention to borrow, but other limitations on the operation are proposed. That is 500,000 and 100,000. No limitation on the variable rates, so that we can go for the variable or fixed rates, depending which one's best at the time. I propose that you support that and let myself and Emma make the decision, and that you adopt the borrowing strategy as outlined in the first part of the report, and the investment strategy in the middle of the report. And with that, I'll leave it open to questions. I can't see anybody as if they're wanting to speak. So will anybody propose that we accept the recommendations, please? Edgar has proposed. John has seconded that. Can we have a show of hands, please? Either with the blue hand or thumbs up, whichever is most convenient for you. Motion carried, thank you. We move on to the next item, which is the mid-term financial plan. Item 11. I think it would be better really if Emir spoke first. This isn't a statutory requirement on the authority to prepare this. It's a recommendation from the Welsh Audit Office in order to assess public bodies and to understand where we're at financially, especially after having years of cuts. I apologize, you were supposed to get this before Christmas, but before things were insecure with the budget, we have brought it forward to now. Section 4 is the main section for you to concentrate on. And when we do have a discussion in the working group in March, if you could keep a copy of this to hand, because it will give you the context regarding what the different scenarios are in front of the authority. So I won't direct you to any particular facts in the report, but it does recognize an increase of 10% and the fact that we're running projects, and that of course has its own challenges, and it recognizes the inflationary pressures. And if the baseline continues beyond the year, I think we'll find that we're in quite a good place for the next few years. But this document will help you with a direction and how much you want to keep in reserve, rather than having waves of having to plan and make cuts because of the financial situation. It's a document that does help us to get a more comfortable journey as far as financial management is concerned. David, did you want to refer to anything specifically? No, not really. I just wanted to confirm the figures here. These have been the subject of discussion between us, and proposals on some things like salary inflation. That's difficult to forecast. Emir was apologizing for not presenting it to you before Christmas. Well, I'm not as such. It would have been foolish really for us to try to forecast what the grant were going to be without actually knowing what this year's April grant was going to be. So the government have been late coming out with the grant information. And if we know what the projections would be, we should know by October, and we would have been in a situation to prepare this in November. But this year it was Christmas before we got the grant. It was good news. Well, if we would have put this together before then, it would have been a pretty different document as such. So it was a prudent thing to wait until we got that information in order to be able to factor it in. It's still a bit of crystal ball gazing, but it's a document that should be considered in well, it's crucial to your considerations from March onwards. It's an interesting and useful document. Does anybody have any questions in relation to this? There are no recommendations, as you can see under 5.4, what the 11 steps are for the future. Owain? I've been showing the card and I'm wearing a hat as the chair of the assets subcommittee at the moment. I'd just like to draw your attention to the operating principles under 5.2, the enabling role with less emphasis on ownership and management. I think we should just make consistent where we're at with regard to the situation after COVID. Should we amend that a bit? When it comes to the operating principles, we have been considering buying land, and you could argue that that goes against that principle, and perhaps officers should revisit that in terms of the corporate work program as we move forward with the new corporate work program. I know it's a minor point as far as the capital program is concerned, but there is quite an important principle behind that. We don't need to propose anything, we just note it for information. This is a working document, like the watermark states. It changes as the situation change or circumstances change, and we update it so that you get a taste of what's going on. Just 2 points regarding the assets that Owain raised. The sub group for the assets will be presented on purchases in the future, and when we adopt the new corporate plan, we will have an opportunity to revisit these again. And I do believe that I can bring you an item on that in March. Everybody happy with that, Brian?
Chairman, just one point following on from Owen's points there on the operating principles. As the budget is evolving, it'd be useful for management and the authority to reflect on whether there's any implications for accelerating any of our own carbon reduction requirements, bearing in mind that 2030 is not that very far away, and whether that's actually built into the current thinking or whether that needs to be brought into the operating principles more clearly.
Dwi'n meddwl sy'n da I ddod â fo yn ffurfiol I fewn I hwn.
I think it would be a good idea to bring it into this formally. There's been quite a lot of expenditure since LSP this year on our own estate to reduce our carbon footprint. I don't know if you wanted to come in with more information on that.
I mean, at some stage, I think we do, and that may well come through in the scrutiny when we get to that stage, as we will be looking at the corporate and asset plans within that over the next few weeks. But I'm just talking about moving forward on that in terms of our operating principles, whether that needs to be made more explicit in the current principles. I'm not suggesting we decide today, but whether we need to make sure that's flagged up going forward, because it's going to be a requirement there, obviously, for the authority as time moves forward.
Cytuno efo chi, Brian.
I agree with you, Brian. Iwan, did you want to come in? I take it that there are several plans in place to reduce carbon and working with our assets. But Brian's point is more general. I can see that there's agreement on that, so I have nothing additional to that to add. If there are no further questions, can we just note the report? Happy to note the report. Owen has proposed and Brian has seconded. Can we have a show of hands that you are supportive, please? Motion carried, thank you. Item 12 is the Esgorn annual report.
Diolch, diolch yn fawr. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Wel, mae'n beth amlwg I mi ddeitha chi ar ddechrau'r cyflwyniad ar adroddiad.
Obviously, at the beginning of the report, the past year has been very challenging, but when we think about the first few weeks of the lockdown, when I was preparing the figures for the management team, foreseeing the losses that were going to be because the site has to be closed for 3 to 6 to a year, I didn't think that the situation from a financial point of view would be as positive. We're hoping to finish the year with a flat budget. It was a budget of 23,000, and for those of you who are keeping a keen eye on the Esgorn budget, we are supposed to be maintaining it on 17,000 a year. But in 2019, we had a very challenging year, and we planned for 2020 and 21 against that background. And so the budget was more generous than it should have been. So we were eating into some of the reserve that we have accrued over the years. The fact that we're finishing the year, hopefully with a flat budget, means that, well, that's thanks to the support that we've had from Welsh Government and central government and some of the charities in order to try and get to grips with COVID-19. That's certainly something that I'm glad about. After very stagnant periods, the staff have been on furlough for months and the volunteers have been kept away, of course. And the activities have all had to be deferred or cancelled in their entirety. Obviously, it's been very disappointing, especially after the previous winter, where we planned very carefully in order to try and see a more successful year than we had in 2019, but we reported on that last year, of course. So following this challenging year in 2019, and as a part of the legacy planning following the lottery grant period that's coming to an end at the end of February, we did commission an audience development plan to assist us to plan for the future, and that work was completed by the spring of 2020. It was fantastic work by a team that were trying to adapt as they went along, as the pandemic started to strike us and the effect of the pandemic was becoming obvious in the Ysgwrn. And the work recognized audiences, opportunities, and set realistic targets, but quite ambitious targets as well, with the aim in the long run of trying to increase the number of visitors to the site, but of course the income that we generate as well. But as a result of the pandemic, the scheme has dated extremely and scarily, really quickly. It sets some form of framework in order to get back on track once the pandemic passes. But we're also in a situation where we do have to accept that that's likely to take quite a lot of time for us to get back to where we were, never mind improving things. It's impossible to see where we'll be in a month, never mind the rest of the season and the years to come. So timely, really, with the audience development plan, we also commissioned an evaluation plan for the lottery scheme. That's one of the requirements of the lottery when they do give grants in the first place. And we did have a very positive report from Kenan Jones and his team. The development plan achieved the aims and objectives that was originally set. And very importantly, we did achieve the approved objectives, which is the list of things that the lottery states that, well, these are the things that we're expecting you to deliver during the period of the plan. So there's a strong legacy that we're all proud of. There are opportunities that have arisen as in this rural area as a result of the development. The standard and quality of the development is something to be proud of, as well as the brilliant experience that's offered to everybody from all sorts of different backgrounds. So it's been very successful. So we need to be aware of the opportunities. That is to maintain and increase the number of visitors, first of all, and the commercial pressure to maintain the income on the site in order to be sustainable. That's a daily challenge. Actually, running the Ysgwrn is a daily challenge, but a lot of important work has been undertaken during the last few months to make sure that the Ysgwrn succeeds, where so many of the projects have totally failed as the lottery grants come to an end. So like I said, the lottery scheme will come to an end at February. So we expect the expenditure to be flat. One aspect in the evaluation where there's room to build upon is the links with the Village of Charlestown. Over the years, the relationship with the village has been really important through the planning stage and the development stage, but it's true to say that we have taken that relationship more for granted recently, and we've started to rebuild that relationship by engaging more with our volunteers, especially the local ones, and arranging specific activities for them as permitted by the regulations of COVID, of course. We have started a new project, which is a virtual drama scheme, which is funded by the Cultural Resilience Fund. It's led by Siwan Llynner and Guy Toms, and they were the creative team that were responsible for creating the Awen in 2017. Some of you will remember the community production. They made quite an impression on the village, and it was an experience that was really, really appreciated. And we're using this as something to spark the relationship once again, and hopefully there will be an opportunity to build on this again when the pandemic period comes to an end. Having said that,
there is no
there's no
way
way of
of
painting over
painting
the obvious
over the
cracks.
cracks. And the figures of
income and
visitor figures
visitor
are
numbers
so
are
low, but
scarily
that is to
low,
be
but that's to be expected
after
after
being closed
a
for
long
so
period
long.
of closure.
And we were closed as
We
well.
weren't able to reopen in March because of the lockdown period. We were closed until August and then from October until today, and we don't know when we'll be able to reopen. The period of 8 weeks when we were open was a very challenging
period, as
because
we needed to respect and keep to the
regulations that the Welsh Government had put in place in order to stop the spread of the virus, and that meant that the visitor numbers needed to be managed very carefully, and we had to put procedures in place and hygiene procedures in place in order to look after the staff and visitors in the wider sense. And of course, we were only able to have 2 visits on site. It doesn't take much of a mathematician to figure out that there's a very tight income limitations really when you're only open for that little time. So the decision to reopen wasn't an easy one. There's costs involved with opening, staffing costs, which are not insignificant, but there are also other costs if we're open or not. And because the lottery grant is still paying for salary costs during 2020-21, it was worthwhile just about for us to reopen the site. The reason for reopening wasn't just for financial reasons. In order to demonstrate really that the is going to stay in people's minds in order to show confidence. I have to say the fact that we have been able to reopen last year, although for a short period, it does make the current insecurity a bit easier to deal with. Everything's in place already, and we will be able to open quite quickly when the permission to do so will be given, but we're not foreseeing that that will happen until Wales is in tier 2. Despite that, the spirit of the ESCON has still continued through all of the recent challenges. Like so many other museums, etc., we've turned to the digital media. That happened during the first weeks of the lockdown. We had to learn very quickly how to use Canva and iMovie apps in order to create new content to share. We shared quite a few digital stories about the lesser known artifacts, and through media such as Museum Unlocked, we were able to share the experience of dealing with the pandemic, and that was a boost to morale, if nothing else. Then over the summer, we took part in campaigns such as Kids in Museums, and Cynwal ap Myrddin, who's from Penllyn, was working with us for the week. He succeeded in creating a lot of activity and a buzz during the time with us, and seeing such an enthusiastic young man during such a dark time, it wasn't just a lot of comfort, but he was an inspirational as well, because we're maintaining this gun for the future. We also got to know during the summer that the SLSP application had been successful and the work is still ongoing. The backup boiler is being implemented and improvements as well, and some of the work has already been completed. And of course, it makes life easier for us already with the escort management. I'm talking about drainage and the car park and putting the slate surface on bedi fluid, and anything that makes life easier in the escort is to be welcome. During the winter, we had a new confidence in the fact that we're starting to get used to the virtual procedures, and we arranged a virtual work program for the winter time with Merlin Ap Dafydd, Arfon Gwilym and Sioned Webb. A Christmas show as well, and there was work to create new digital content such as the Carol Night, Santa's Dwynwen stories, etc. We were able to fund these through the different grants that we received through the SLSP, the Arts Fund and Resilience Fund. And so we haven't increased the entrance fee. There were at least 35 households attending those events and 36 children in the Christmas show, and over 17,000 watched the different events on YouTube and Facebook. And I have to say, it has really been very heartening. The ESCON has been able to offer entertainment for people for the past few months, and the fact that we've been able to reach a new set of people, some of people who live within the reach of the ESCON but haven't been able to attend because of busy lives, and others thinking, oh, am I going to go out during winter evenings? But we've also been able to reach people who live far away and who've enjoyed and appreciate the opportunity to engage. Although so many of us are really keen to socialize once again in the real world, the popularity of the virtual program has been heartening, and so when we will be able to continue with events, etc. on site, we need to consider what's possible commercially. Can we charge for some of these events? But that's a challenge that every site or cultural site has to face. Another challenge is the situation with staffing I'm referring to in the report. The manager moved to a new post in the authority in October, and the ESCON board have approved an alternative structure for staffing, which puts us on a more sustainable standpoint. It gives more focus on engaging and increasing income. But as a member, an officer, I recommended that we don't appoint to the new experience post until we know the future, because it feels a bit of a waste to do that at the moment. And I think we need to be prudent when we plan for the future to come, or for the year to come, sorry. But when working with the freelance marketing officer, a lot of the planning work will be happening in any case in that sense. In December, a filming crew came to the ESCON, and that program will be broadcast in the spring, and hopefully that will be a marketing boost for us. I had hoped that the broadcast had been the same time as our reopening, but it seems increasingly unlikely that we'll open for Easter like we would normally. But hopefully the program will remind people, especially learners, that the ESCON is a great place for visitors to go, and that there's an opportunity to practice the Welsh language and really get to grips with Welsh culture. And there's a full activity program that's been arranged for the year, and for every one of those activities have a backup plan as well. Such things like St. David's Day events, yoga sessions, a discussion on the wallpaper in the ysgol, volunteer fair days, etc. And that takes us up to Christmas. So I am optimistic, but financially it's unlikely that 2021-22 will be good for the ysgol. We're waiting to hear when the site can reopen, and the nature of the guidelines that we get from Welsh Government will decide to all intents and purposes to which degree what will be worthwhile undertaking and when we can reopen. I'm referring specifically to how many people we can get in one place at any given time, what the real rules will be regarding hygiene, etc. But the good news is that we have a crew of enthusiastic staff and volunteers who are really keen to get back to the site whenever that will be. I wanted to refer, when I close, to the resilience of the people who have kept the ysgol going over the years. The ysgol has faced horrendous challenges right from the beginning. The Spanish flu, etc. So the resilience of people has kept us going, and with the good luck, we will be able to survive this latest pandemic. So thank you for your support during the year and for accepting the report, and I'm here to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you for that report, Naomi. I'm glad to hear that everything is looks so good, and it looks good for the future as well. Judith.
Diolch, jyst eisiau diolch o galon, Naomi.
I just wanted to thank Naomi really and congratulate yourself
you and the staff very much for the excellent work which you have done under such challenging conditions. You do excellent work, and to have 17,000 people at the carol service, that's fantastic. Thank you. And you are acting so positively, and you have very significant successes. Thank you, Naomi.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Naomi, for the report. It's just for a point of clarification, really, and there's probably no significance in it. But if you go to 8.2 in the report, there's a table which gives various costs and projections. And under building and land maintenance, about halfway down, there's an item for rates, which for the forthcoming year will be £1,930. And if we carry on down the table, below water rates and cleaning materials, it's another one for rates, which is it.
Well spotted.
Just wondering what.
I'm just catching up. I'm just trying to find the second one. I've got the Welsh copy, sorry, my copy Cymraeg in it.
I've got the Welsh copy here.
Just above LPG boiler, which is at the bottom of the table.
It's not in the Welsh.
Ah, right, okay.
It's a mistake in the English. I apologise.
Okay, no problem.
Apologies.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Phil. That will be corrected. Judith has said exactly what I was going to say. Thank you, Naomi, and the team for the work you do in Ysgol. And I'm sure that Naomi will pass on our thanks to the staff. And hopefully we'll see it sooner rather than later. But I just want to repeat what Judith said. Thank you, Naomi, and the crew for maintaining the Ysgol and keep its name alive during this pandemic. Thank you.
Brian?
Brian?
No.
Thank you, Chair. The point I wanted to make has been made, except for one, which I support all that. I think it's absolutely brilliant. The 17,000 attendees to the carol service over a period of time sort of flagged something in the back of my mind in terms of what expertise we have working with you to exploit. Obviously, you can attract people to that. As you've explained, they come from a wide range. I think the trick going forward is how we use that not only just to promote what happens, but how you turn those online people into physical presence. Yeah. And it may well be that we could, I don't know, maybe you've got the expertise in your team or current contacts. If not, I would suggest that maybe we cast wider of other people who have used social media to attract physical presence to guide us on how we can do that and make a really good killing from it, because 17,000 is amazing.
Well, that
is such an important point, because if we have 17,000 visitors paying to come to the Ysgwrn every year and everybody buying a cup of tea, there wouldn't be a financial problem ever. It would be excellent. And this is a point, from what I understand, which has been raised by many institutions over the last few months. How do we turn the digital capital, in a way, into financial capital and to revenue? I totally agree with your point, and I will note this as part of the marketing planning work which needs to be done, and see whether we can plan for attracting those people to the site. So we'll do as much as we can out of what's happened. I haven't got a solid answer, but I'm very happy to accept what you've said.
Ia, diolch yn fawr am yr adroddiad. Mi nas Naomi gyfeirio at y gwerth o rannu profiadau efo amgueddfa eraill. Yn ystod yr drafodaeth ar y pwyllgor rheoli'r ysgwrn, wnaethon ni...
We've lost translation again, Chairman.
Oh, sorry, no. I do. Yes, I can hear, yes. Brian, can you hear?
Yes,
yes, you can.
Translation's back, thank you.
Yes. During the management committee, Naomi, we discussed the potential to cooperate with other museums locally. I don't know where you've reached as far as that discussion is concerned. Well, we have been working with the Gwynedd museums, and with the Penmaen Mawr Museum specifically, on the work, the Culture Resilience Fund, that's happened. But I think at present that everybody's so busy dealing with the situation which we're in now, I think it's difficult for us to cooperate and do any forward planning, but things have started. Literally, what we've got now, that grant, and what we can do, and how, yes, what kind of applications we're going to be able to present. But certainly there's a basis there which we can build upon now, or from the spring forward. Right. Are there any other questions? The recommendations are on page 62. Then to contribute what we can do, and also to give an opinion on options about opening hours for this year. under the conditions, of course, it's very difficult. We don't know what to suggest. I don't know whether anybody wants to propose anything, or we'll leave it to you on the board to do whatever you think is right. I'm sure you're welcome to come to this authority or any committee if you want. The board is meeting at the end of February, so we'll be able to discuss things in detail then. I'm sure if anybody has any opinion, people can contact you anyway, of course. I don't see any. Will anybody propose then that we accept the recommendations? Phil proposes and Sarah seconds it and Brian. So could you show, please, that you support this? Thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you. A positive report as usual. Then item 13, the working groups reports. And when have you anything you want to raise? No, thank you, Gwyn. No, I've got nothing. But these have been recommended in the meeting of the working party. I don't know if anybody wants to raise anything. Or do you accept them? Do you? Right. Thank you, Anwen. Unless somebody has a question which you'd like to ask, propose. Could you? We've had a, I'll second the proposal, but I have a question before I second then. The chief executive has suggested that there should be a meeting between Gwynedd, with Gwynedd about these yellow lines. Now, I've had a lot of this in Rhyd Ddu since the beginning, really, 6 years ago, that we need yellow lines there, especially in places where it's a danger. And they were telling me in Gwynedd Council that they were holding back because the park wanted to put some input into this, and this meeting is happening in February, is it? Yes. Helen and the team will be meeting officers, and she did take members out to the Penpass area 4 or 5 years ago, and the advice of members was then just to have yellow lines round the junction at Pengurid, because there were concerns about urbanisation of rural countryside. But the pressures have increased so much since then. And so we need to discuss things further with Gwynedd. And in order to solve problems, we'll have to accept that Gwynedd has moved forward, will move forward now and put down yellow lines in Penpass, Pengurid area. I don't know what the situation is in the village of Rhyd Ddu, but there was local objection, wasn't there? Well, no, not really. What's happened, the community council is in favour of putting these. They were parking on corners and before bus stops, etc. And the thing is, there are two, more or less, who are against it, but they have many places there, and they send a letter to every county, to every house, and there isn't as much objection as there were letters, husband and wife signing, etc. It's, well, what we want, well, the community, they want safety as the issue, really. Generally, as an authority, we don't give comments about within the boundaries of villages. The only advice gave to Cyngor Gwynedd about Rhyd Ddu was that there was an answer to the problem. People were parking there because there wasn't many parking places around, but things are better now. And So if there are more bus services, etc., it would be better. I'm willing to second then. Chairman, thank you. Owain? Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that there's been a reference to ideas about celebrations. Is there an update on that? Yes, Helen has had ideas and she held a vote on it. I don't remember exactly what it was, but events to coincide with the legacy of the project, and I asked her to develop it and bring it to present it to the management team. And I'll want to come back to you, members. We need resources to do one or two of the things which have been suggested. Right. Thank you. Then, oh, are we going to vote? Okay. Unless somebody else has a question, we'll take a vote on this. Could you show that you support and that you accept the minutes? That's been carried. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Celyn, Tegid and Tryweryn conference. Elwyn, were you sharing this? Chairman, there's item 14 before that. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologise. Item 14, meetings of other organisations. Thank you, Owen, for drawing my attention to that. Anything there? I don't see, the connection isn't very good, but I don't see, oh, Gethin. Do you want to report back on any of those meetings? No, I want to raise something. I'm going through the meetings of the Celyn, Tegid and Tryweryn minutes. No, I made a mistake. The item 14 we're dealing with now. Unless somebody has anything to raise on item 14, which is the meetings of other organisations, we'll move on to item 15, which is the minutes of the meeting which Elwyn was chairing. Thank you, Chairman. I'll present the report as it is. We haven't had a meeting for some years, and as things were in the pipeline now, the train and the gates by the lake and reinforcing the wall, etc., we thought we'd have a meeting. It went all right, apart from one person who began to shout, and usually, well, apart from that, it went all right. Anything else? Gethin. I just want to note, and 2 apologies for absence. I'm on the Llaneltid Community Council, and I don't know anybody called Harold Davies. Llaneltid isn't supposed to be. Something needs to be corrected there. I don't know who Harold Davies is. Can I leave that with you? And when do you know what that is? Who is Harold Davies, Llaneltid Community Council? I've no idea. These minutes are rather old, and institutions had been invited, which we didn't know about. So it was organised by the wardens and the administrative staff, so it's a little bit untidy. I'll check up on that. Okay. I don't know who it is, so he shouldn't be there. Elfed? Thank you. Elfed? Just one question. Hugh Jones, Farmers Union, it's Undeb a Meithwyr Cymru now. The title is a bit different. Yes, thank you. Do you want to say anything? We haven't discussed another meeting. If something arises, we arrange a meeting. So that's it, unless there's something else. I understand from Jonathan that a planning application has gone in on item 6. Yes, and there is an application on the way for the train as well.
Okay.
Right, okay, thank you very much. So, do you propose that we accept the minutes?
Chairman? Yeah, sorry, I had one question. In the meeting back in 2019, there was a lot of discussion with the Environment Agency over water levels and all of that. I don't know whether there's been any feedback through the chair, whether that was being addressed. It seemed to be a big issue at the meeting, and it would be useful to know whether that is still the level of problem, bearing in mind the storms and all the rest of it that we've had.
This has been raised for over 30 years about water on Llyn Tegid. If we'll have floodings now, there'll be water there in the field before me. It's there round the reel. We've argued and argued with them. And they've been refusing to do things over the years, and they're still refusing to do things. But things did improve after a man drowned in Llangwyllo. But, you know, it comes up right to this, up to here. 9 feet of water, actually, by the bridge in Llandrillo, according to what we heard. And then, you know, oh dear. But the problem is still in existence. It's a huge problem. They don't listen to us because they want water for canoeing. Well, if they kept, you know, if they had water down from the Rennig, etc., but they just don't see it. Thank you, Alan. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, that's...
Thank you. So will somebody propose that we accept the minutes?
Brian ag Elfed, newch chi gyd dangos.
Brian and Elfed have seconded. Could you all show that you support, please? That has been carried. Thank you very much. And that is end of the meeting. Thank you for